So we have 4 dangerous killers all in one breathtaking book. The Killer Across the Table is an international bestseller that covers the experience the retired FBI agent John Douglas had while interviewing these killers. And working beside him, of course, is American author Mark Olshaker, who has worked with John before to write other stunning books. And basically what this book boils down to, he talks about the disturbing crimes, he talks about his interviews with these criminals and his evaluation of them. Now, I didn't know who John Douglas was before, but after looking him up, he joined the FBI in 1970, and he also interviewed some other notorious killers. You got Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, Edmund Kemper, and other notorious killers, of course. But this book here goes over Joseph McGowan, Joseph Condrell, Donald Harvey, and Ted Kohlhepp. And this book is not for the faint of heart because he goes over some graphic details. He goes over the crimes that these guys have committed. And not just these guys, he kind of goes back and forth with other notorious killers he's interviewed. And then he goes into the interview. Now, something that I found interesting early in the book is he explains how important it is to set up the interview, because usually when he's doing these interviews, of course, they're already in jail, and sometimes they don't want to give information, right? They want to hold themselves in. They don't want to express themselves. They don't want to give too much information about the crimes. That is why he sets up these interviews in such a manner, and he describes it in the book. He makes sure that the interview room is neutral, right? It's calm, it's relaxed. He's not really trying to interrogate him for more information. He's just basically kind of talking to him or them one-on-one. He works alongside another FBI agent. I forgot the name of the other guy, but they basically sit down with the killer and they just go over the incidents. He doesn't have a judging tone, right? He's just kind of, tell me more about this, blah, blah, blah. And that's basically what this book is about, the interviews, of course. I think the main point of this book, the main point that John Douglas is trying to make through this book is, the whole debate between nature and nurture, right? He says it over and over throughout the book. Are these the types of things that these killers learn through their environment, or were influenced through their environment, or was it something that was natural to them? Something that they were born with, right? This instinct to kill. And something that I found important in this book is childhood. These 4 killers, when he's explaining their childhood, you realize that all of these guys, all these 4 guys had a pretty bad childhood growing up. They were abused, they were sexually abused, molested, they were treated with no love. They didn't have any sort of love with family members. He also goes into the whole dominating and controlling mother. In the book Psycho, this book here, I already reviewed it, and basically it's about a serial killer, and his mother is who pretty much influenced him to do these sort of things. She was very, dominating and controlling, and he kind of referenced this book here. So that's another aspect that he kind of goes into. Now, with the whole nature and nurture thing, personally, in my opinion, I can't see these things come from a nature thing. I refuse to believe that someone was born to do these sort of things, and what they've committed are pretty graphic. To be honest, I was reading this book and I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't understand why. Right, I understood what they did, but I could not understand why they did it. You try to comprehend the disturbing crimes that they've done, and you just can't. That's why I refuse to believe that this is something that is nature. I don't think any of us are just born to be this evil. Personally, I feel like all of it has to do with the nurture aspect of it. Again, the childhood, the parents, did they show the person love? Their environment is what's causing these people to do these sort of things. And again, he goes into the details of their childhood. For example, Todd Kohlhepp, when he was a kid, he stayed with his grandparents, and his grandparents beat him constantly. No one showed him love. And of course, and he mentions this, of course, as well, this shouldn't be an excuse to do these sort of acts. Of course, nothing makes killing something right to do, right? Another interesting aspect of this book, and he kind of covers it a little in the book, is the homicidal triad, right? There are three things or three signs that can help you identify an individual who could have the potential of being a killer. One of them is wetting their bed at a older age, right? They're old. They shouldn't be wetting the bed, but they wet the bed. Arsony, right? Burning things, using explosive, being obsessed with burning things. And finally, hurting or killing small animals, pets, or other individuals like people, right? And honestly, I thought the most interesting one from the three is wetting the bed. I didn't really understand, what would cause them to wet the bed at such an old age. What's the psychology behind that? But these are the signs that will help you identify a troubled individual before it gets to that point. Now, right? Again, this book here is divided into 4 different sections, all talking about, each individual killer, 4 killers. Again, you got Joseph McGowan, Joseph Condrell, Donald Harvey, and Todd Colehip. The one that I found most interesting was Donald Harvey. And Donald Harvey, also known as the Angel of Death, he basically killed elderly women and men working as an orderly. Now, an orderly is someone who helps hospital personnel, right? Helps the doctor, helps the nurses with setting things up. They're not necessarily a doctor. They're just there to provide help and assistance to these workers at the hospital. Now, he claimed he killed 87 people, but only 37 were confirmed, right? 87 individuals, and not just any people, elderly men and women. This here is actually a classification of a type of killer that he covers here, because John Douglas is basically classifying all these different types of killers and serial killers, and to better understand them, to prevent it from happening again. Now, the medical murderer is what they classify him as, right? Someone who uses his power and his knowledge in the medical field to kill the people who are in need, right? And that's what strikes me the most, right? These people go to the hospital to get help. Elderly men and women, they go there to get assistance, to get help. Obviously, they're at the last stages of their lives, and they need the help, right? And imagine being in that situation where you're sick, or you're an elderly person, and you're at the hospital just trying to get assistance and help, and next you got this guy who just comes in and tries to murder or does kill you. Another reason why I find his story so compelling is because throughout his killing spree, no one connected him with the killings, right? Everyone who worked around him just kind of shrugged their shoulders. Maybe they didn't really connect it. Maybe, they didn't expect him to be a killer, so therefore they just didn't think of it, or they thought it but never told anyone to kind of stay out of the drama, stay out of trouble and all that stuff. That's what I found most compelling about this story, is that it could have been prevented far sooner, but I think that people try to stay quiet about it, just to kind of not be stuck in the situation. And that's what John Douglas explains, is that when a hospital began to connect him with all these killings, they simply fired him because they didn't want to have that sort of spotlight. Like, imagine if a hospital were like, oh, we just fired this, or there's this guy who we suspect killed, a large amount of people, right? People are going to go berserk. The hospital is going to be in the spotlight, right? People are going to get fired, and all this chaos is going to kind of unfold, which should have happened. That's way better than people dying. But of course, you have the people in charge and the people around in the hospital, working for the hospital, who don't want that to happen. So that is why it was so easy for this guy to kill so many people. And again, another important part of all of this is understanding their childhood, right? His childhood, he was continuously sexually molested. He was sexually molested as a kid, right? By, I believe it was his neighbor and his uncle, who continuously molested him when he was young. And I think this, apart from his parents, I believe he was adopted as well. No one really showed him love. He was molested, and all of this kind of just caused him to become a killer. He also goes into the detail as to how he killed each of his victims. But that's the killer that I found most interesting. Obviously, you got the other ones who just, it again, the details are just gruesome. But this book here was interesting to read. This is the first book I've read that deals with this sort of thing. Killers, murder, and crime, and that type of stuff. I found it to be interesting. There was a lot of repetition throughout the book, but that is it. Killer across the table. If you're into crime, if you're into learning about murder and the criminal mind, and you've also watched Mindhunter, I believe it was called, this is definitely a book you want to get your hands on and start reading. But that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time I finish a book or finish watching a movie.